Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Practical Pet Chat. A lot of us, Lauren, have pets and are bringing new pets in or considering bringing new pets in. And I think that's something that is really critical for setting up the success of the entire household. How do you approach bringing in a new pet into your family, especially when you already have a pet?
I think it's easier if you have multiple pets already to introduce a new pet. What's difficult is when you have a pet, like a dog or a cat, and then you want to bring in somebody else because typically, I used to hear this at the store all the time, that the new kid coming in is just trying to fit in, feel things out, make friends, um, survive. Um, and the existing kid is like, why are they here? We don't need them. Send them back. They're
Yes.
touching my toys. Why are they drinking out of my bowl? Don't feed it. It's not staying.
Yeah.
And all this attitude that's coming about. Rarely um is it a yay, I have a friend. Now that changes somewhat if it's a puppy or a kitten, because they just ingratiate themselves and they're willing to take a few swats around, get away from me, you bother me, and come back again and try again. If you're bringing home a shelter kid or an older kid, it can be a little bit touchy, and I will have conversations with people who think the answer is to put their existing, let's say, dog on a leash in their own home while they introduce the new kid who's not on a leash, which I
Right.
think is completely wrong from a psychological standpoint because the existing animal, that is their home, that is their environment, that is their things. And they recognize the containment of the leash. So if you're going to put somebody under control, it needs to be either the new kid or put them both under control. I like to always
Well,
have an X pen and put the new kid in the X pen where they can go up, they could sniff, they can kind of walk around each other, they can observe, and nobody can really get hurt. So, once that goes well, then I will take the new kid out and do some, short time introductions and then return that kid. There's got to be some build up time and always make the existing kid feel like the most important kid. You were first, it's your house, but look, this is your friend. And, introduce them nicely and carefully. A lot of it is being able to read the room, literally, read the room,
yeah.
read your kid, know what's happening.
Yeah, so I love that you say that. I actually don't like to do the introduction in the room. I want them to meet in a neutral place. And so that's always been something that not only have I done for myself, but anybody who's asked me, hey, what's the best way? Hey, can you be around? Um, can you come over? I'm like, no, that's the last place I want that to happen. I want them to be introduced in a neutral place, get comfortable, get feeling, because it's just like meeting, other people. I don't meet someone in my home. We meet someplace, we talk, we hang, and then there's that comfort level to bring them into my space and my environment. I many times, especially with bigger animals, it is
Hmm.
part of their mindset. This is my job. And there are certain breeds like that
Yeah.
too, where they walk the perimeter every morning. I am going to catch every new scent, smell, etc., and then I'm going to do that in my house. And if everything's calm and everything's right, my guard goes down. But if I catch a sniff of something, and same thing, cats, etc. The so to me, if you can, I love doing it in a neutral place. I think that's really important and it disarms them. And you also get, I think a more playful because you've let that mind release of I have to be the protector of everything in this environment to, oh, hey, there's a lot of new things. And so there's almost that expectation of it's going to be new things in this interaction. And so I like to see that. I also like to see a natural, like who's going to lead, who's going to follow. I don't think that happens as much in the main household because automatically you're setting up this is, the hierarchy because this is my house and you're the guest. And I don't know. So that's my first and biggest thing. Um, and I think I've seen a lot of, especially rescues, start to do those types of things as well, um, because everybody thinks their dog is the best, and they're all right, and they could potentially be wrong in the wrong situation, and that's it situation I want to avoid.
I think it's important to know, though, don't get lulled into a false sense of security. Meeting on neutral ground does create neutrality, absolutely.
Yes.
But bringing them both back into the house together, if your expectation is that it may go exactly like it went on the
No.
neutral ground, it likely won't, because now the dog whose home it is like, well, this is different now. This is my
Yep.
turf. It's my family. It's my house. It's my stuff. And I don't think you can go, oh, they did so well out at the park and bring them home and turn them loose. I think
Yeah.
that's a
No,
recipe for disaster because
yeah.
I think you really still have to monitor that and be sure that the existing dog is still cool with having, I mean, I've seen situations, I've had clients come to me and go, it went so well at the park, and we got home and I said it was sort of a mom, they're touching me, they're touching me, they're touching my stuff. And they were like, yeah, it didn't go well. She was growling and everything else. And I go, well, it's her domain. So,
Right.
the park is one thing, home is
Yeah.
another. You still have to be aware of interloper.
Yeah. You're still going to have to deal with that. I mean, that
Hmm.
doesn't go away. It is just the we all fear what we don't know, and
Sure.
that extends on down to our four-legged friends and our feathered friends as well. So just eliminating a couple of extra things like
Hmm.
who the heck is this? I mean, I see it with the squirrel circus. Uh, for a long time, it was these, evil, beings are awful. And now Belle gets a kick out of it and they can get right up close to her. Sugar could pull a bird out of the air flying across our yard. It was terrifying. Um, and then as they'd sit up higher in the tree, she'd learn to appreciate them a little bit more to the point where they'd come down a few branches and she wouldn't, take her flying leap and grab it like a bird dog would. So it's that familiarity is one, I always talk about it like a steam pot. If I can just let a little bit of steam out in different ways,
Hmm.
I've got a better chance of brewing what I'm aiming for than just a fast boil and hope it doesn't boil over. But I agree with you, and that's that other part of it, right? Is one of the mistakes I see is to your point earlier, right? One's on the leash, one's not. That's a disadvantage that forces whoever's on leash to feel they're at the
Defensive.
disadvantage. Yeah, and they're vulnerable, and so yeah. So I will say, it's if I was drawing it up for me, and that's the other interesting thing that you called out, which I should have acknowledged, is there are many times where it's not a multi-day process or a multi-step process, and so in that situation, you got to do the best that you can. And one thing I'll say too is you set the tone, meaning you, the person, because they're reading your energy. You don't realize you're giving off, stress or concern, or you're, it's like, hey, it's this
Hmm.
because your pet knows you, right? So the long term pet is sitting there going, the mom or dad is upset. I need to take care of this. And it goes back into threat mode instead of, oh, this is interesting. This is something new. I'm curious. I love to explore new things. Now it's they're upset. I need to take care of this because that's my job in the family. That's where I sit in the hierarchy. Um, but if I had my druthers, I again would take a stepped process, outside in the front lawn, backyard, and then into the house. The
I
house
think,
is the most like potential for the chaos and the overreaction from the people. because things get knocked over and broken and this and that. In those two other areas, there's enough space. Get the zoomies out, run, play, be, dogs, be whatever you're going to be. And then I move into the house. But yeah, go ahead. You were going to say something.
I think that the factor of age has to enter into it too, because,
Yeah.
whatever, if there's a senior dog in play, then introducing a rambunctious puppy can be a bit much. But the other thing is too, and I've seen this happen, and it's never ended well. Um, People will introduce a, a infant animal, something that's 6 or 8 weeks old, that isn't really, I mean, let's face it, 8 weeks, been around for 2 months. So they don't know how to read other beings,
Right.
that they have no exposure. And so they just stumble into things. And the reaction of the existing animal can be at times not only very negative, but harming. So I think you need to be watchful of that because the infant animal doesn't know what's coming. They don't know how to read it. They don't know how to guard against it. It's one thing to get a swat across the nose, and boot it aside. It's another to be picked up by the back of your neck and shaken very hard, which can be deadly. So there are a lot of factors, and I don't think you can let your guard down. Let's say it goes well in the house for the first day, and then the second day it goes pretty well, and the third day it goes really well, and then people go, gosh, they're getting along so well. I think I'm going to leave them alone together when I'm at work. Oh God, I think you need more time.
Yeah.
I think you need to be there. I think you need more time. You need to see how things are going. Maybe leave them in a room together where you're in the next room if you think it's going that well. But I didn't honestly, I didn't leave kids together. I didn't get 12 at once. I got one, and then they just, I got them wet, and then I got another one, and it was things like that. So the one advantage I will say is, oh my God, did it make potty training easy? Because I bring another kid in, and especially the kid that, that I took off the street, she was a complete mess. And she came in and she really didn't, I mean, you could tell she wasn't used to being around other animals. She had to learn the dynamics of being in an environment that already had 8 kids in it, 8 little, 8 dogs, and learn to coexist. And she had to get the potty training down, and she would watch and observe. And the first couple of times she made a mistake, and it was pointed out to her, and she sat and she watched when other kids didn't make a mistake, and she went, I get it. And
Yeah.
that's how she learned. So, you constantly have to be dialed into the body language, and two-legged kids don't get along all the time. So you want to be sure animals can take it to the next level. You want to be sure that you're there monitoring it and you're enforcing what is and isn't okay, and that there's safety for all the beings concerned. And if not, you need to take the steps to adapt to that. Again, maybe an X pen that keeps them far enough apart, or crates, or maybe one kid has to go into a bedroom and another kid goes into the rest of the house. It just every situation is different, so you have to be open-minded to it.
Yeah. No, a lot of great things there to unpack. I love that too. You brought back a great memory for me of Belle. You couldn't learn the bell real quick. Sugar had taught Zoe how to use the bell to go outside and then how to come back in. And I remember the first time Zoe did that, I was like over the moon, like, oh my gosh, how smart this dog is. And, I'm praising her, and Sugar walks over and just like, dang, yeah, who do you think taught her, Dad? Um, so it's just kind of one of those things of you're so right. They will teach each other. And then I love that you talked about they got to have their own things as well in their own spaces. And so whether it's a crate and all the rest of that, um, one of the things that I see go wrong early is there's only the existing toys, there's only the existing one outdoor, bed, etc. And that's that territorial thing being set up for absolute failure. So one of the things that I've done is when we do those things or I'm working with friends and helping them out is I'll say, let's grab all that stuff, not, shockingly and remove it. But especially with the toys, let's bring in a whole slew of other toys that almost start fresh. And let's go through there. And same thing on the beds outside. You've got the elevated bed, hopefully. Um, you can't have one, have, two and, get them up there, this is yours, this is yours. And yeah, I think we all know eventually they're going to be in one anyway, because hopefully if things go well, they want to be around each other. They, will end up doing those things. Um, but you've just got to instill, I love what you said earlier. Yes, you were here first. Um, I've never known anybody um, that has said, "Oh, I hope we get another, you know, pet, to our family that will take over and be the dominant one and be the this." The goal for all of us is another loving family
Mhm.
member.
Sure.
And so, like so many other things we talk about, it's like the failures are avoidable with just a little bit of forethought and planning and effort. And this is one of those things that the difference it makes sets you up for a lifetime of success. And one of the other things too, that territorial thing. So I used to do this thing with all of our different pets throughout our family members, and we've had huge German shepherds, Great Pyrenees, on down the line. Um, was I would make sure that while they knew those were their toys, that those toys were not worth getting wild and aggro about. And so I would play games with them and I would cover them and I would, hey, let's see what their reaction is going to be because I felt that, strong enough, good enough, they weren't going to, overreact. But you could see which toy was their trigger point.
Hmm.
And if you see that, then that's something that, hey, this first couple of weeks, let's take that out. And then the next time you reintroduce it, to your point, you got to have that vigilance. It's something new. It could be a new trigger point. Even though it's an old toy, this was their favorite. And it's the only time I ever saw an issue between Sugar and Zoe was literally the toy that Sugar got adopted with that came home with her that day. That was her like, nobody touches that. Not my kids, not Zoe, nobody but her. And if she offered it to you, then you were fine. But you didn't go and grab it because it just represented too much for her. So you know your pets. Learn those things, identify those things, think through those things. There are just certain things.
Well, and one of the things I think a lot of people make a mistake, they'll have multiple dogs that play with toys, and yet they'll bring home one toy. It's like, no, no, no. Even with my little dogs, I bring home two, minimum of two, or I
Yeah,
bring home three or four or five, whatever, and I throw them all out at one time. But if I only put one out, I did that. I made that mistake because I found one that I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cute. And my dog who likes llamas and pacas, I found one. And so I brought it home. And of course, she loved it. And the other dog looked at me like, where's mine?
yeah.
And I was like, oh crap. So, I real quick went and got something that they hadn't played with in ages, and she was fine. And so I made a point of every time making sure that I covered that base. But you talked about the beds. I had an interesting thing with a client who, same thing. I said, make sure you have extra beds, make sure. And eventually they ended up sleeping together in the same bed.
Yeah.
So she took one of the older beds away, which was the original dog's bed. And
No, yeah.
because she's like, well, they're always in the same bed together. And I was like, yeah, what happened when you took that bed away? She said, she's been relentless looking for that bed. I said, you can't take, she goes, I don't want it anymore. I said, you don't want it, but she does.
Yeah.
I said, find somewhere that she knows that that bed is that you can live with and let her have her bed. That's her home base. That's her safety zone. If anything happens, if she gets sick, years later, that dog passed away in that bed.
Oh,
That's where
yeah.
she went to that bed
Yeah.
because that was her first bed. which, was
Mm.
devastating to hear at the time. But the owner had come by and said, I wanted to thank you. She passed away last night. And I said, oh, God. And she said, in her bed that you told me not to throw away.
Yeah. Wow. Mm.
And I was like, that stuck with me forever. I was like, okay, where that's going to be a rule forever.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the reasons too why I like to rotate different things. So there's that re-excitement when they find stuff. Because let's be honest too, right? A lot of times they take their favorite things and they want to hide them themselves, right? They want to bury it. Sugar would do that all the time. I'll never forget one of my favorite, funniest moments was Sugar gave that particular her everything toy to one of my kids who was super excited, threw it up in the air, and it got caught in the tree. And I remember thinking to myself, well, let me move the kid real fast before Sugar goes, that is coming down, right? And it was up into one of these just crazy trees that, yeah, anyway. But I was like, she did not leave there. Just
Yeah.
wait, like, wow, that kid threw that. It's got to come down at some point. I'm, gravity exists for all of us, right, Dad? And I remember going, she'll probably stay here for the next week if I don't do that, if I don't go up and get it. So I had to figure I got it. And the funny thing, the first thing she did, she went and hid it where she thought
Hmm.
only she would know where it is. And but what ends up happening too is there are other things that they have, and the excitement that when they dig it up or they find it, and so you play with those things. I would do that. We had a couple of German shepherds, and they're just man, they're so smart, and it's hard to pull over on some of them. Um, and so I would just take some of their toys. And that's how I learned also what their favorite toys were because I'd go and hide them. I'm not digging 10-foot holes, okay, folks. I'm just, let's here, take the Easter egg hunt type thing, right? But it is interesting because they'll walk past three to get to that
Uh,
one that they love. And and again, it's just such an easy way to engage with them, but also rotating in a new toy. I like what you said about
mhm.
that. It's like, hey, I'm going to rotate in something new. Let's see what the reaction is. And, it doesn't matter if it's a little dog, big dog. We all love it when we see them jump up and they do the tapping thing and they're like, oh my God, look at this. Has everybody seen this? Check this out. So have fun. I mean, this just goes around in so many different areas. It's not just the introduction, it's the ongoing. And same thing with the vigilance. The vigilance is ongoing. You know, we all have our bad days. We all have, we're not feeling good. You about gutted me and made me cry when you shared that because, yeah, when Sugar passed, um, she went to an area that had that type of stuff and then brought those things and she was gathering her favorite things and then came into the room with us and I'm glad we kept those things
Right.
uh, because there were plenty of times where we thought oh this is old this is that and I'll be honest with all of you out there I kept it because it meant something to me as much as it meant to her. So when you're looking at those things, it's easy to go, hey, you know, gosh, this is old, this is ratty, this is, she won't even miss it. Man, the amount of stories like what you shared uh, and what I'm remembering just will get you. Um, and it's the easiest little thing that we can do. We can find a space for that favorite blanket, that favorite toy, the bed, whatever it was that, was so important to them. And you'll thank yourself. On that, I want to thank all of you for bearing with my last minute here. But important topic is we want all of you to be set up for success. We want to be a tremendous life altering, positive experience. A little bit of planning, a little bit of effort, and a lot of love get you to that point. So, thank you for joining us here on Practical Pet Chat. Share your ideas, your thoughts. What have you done? What's your favorite, your pet's favorite toy? What's their safety place? Whatever it is that you just thought about when Lorin dropped that bomb on me that you all saw, share that with us at practicalpetchat@gmail.com. Thanks so much, everybody. We know you've got a lot going on in your day. We appreciate and get to spend some of it with you.
Thanks, guys.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as, nor should it be construed as, professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment for your pets. Always seek the advice of a qualified veterinarian with any questions you may have regarding your pet's health or medical condition. Never disregard professional veterinary advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The hosts and the guests of this podcast are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared during these episodes. Any reliance on the information provided is solely at your own risk. Copyright 2025 Practical Pet Chat, all rights reserved. Unauthorized duplication, distribution, or reproduction of any content from this podcast, including but not limited to audio, scripts, and show notes, is prohibited without prior written consent. The opinions and views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Practical Pet Chat.